Okay, this video is to get you thinking about your expository structure, and particularly as you start thinking about drafting. So once you have an expository question, something that you think you want to write about, and the essay is an answer to that question. So how do you start providing this answer to your expository question? So if we think about selling manure, the first piece we read in the class, her expository question was probably something like, what are the effects of selling manure that people don't realize? And she worked through, well, one effect is da, 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 da. Another effect is da, 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 da. And that basic structure can be used at the beginning of every expository piece. Okay, it may change, and in fact, it should change. Remember my discussion of the writing process as a recursive process that changes, that you constantly return to, and you're going to end up at different places. It's not a formula where you just drop things in. But I want to give you a sense of this rough draft structure and where to go, because so often formulaic high school writing does not result in either a pleasurable experience or an effective product. So let's think about the typical high school structure. So you're probably familiar with introduction, body, and conclusion, right? So an introduction is essentially, I'm going to tell you, right? In this essay, I've seen stuff like that in high school classes. The body tells us, right? That's where the heart of the essay is. And the conclusion, I just told you. If you're laughing a little bit at this structure, it is because it's inherently ridiculous, right? I mean, this makes sense for upper elementary, maybe middle school. But even then, I would push back that something so formulaic and so redundant and so boring and not responsive to the actual ideas in the essay is a big problem, right? It is the kind of writing that is done when a writer doesn't have any other tools. And if you're in college, you've got to develop tools so you don't look like this kind of writer, right? Your introduction should not tell us what you're going to tell us. Your conclusion should not tell us what you just told us. Those things are needlessly redundant. So what do? Well, I'm going to talk about what you do early in the drafting process. Okay? An introduction is to get the audience's attention and introduce the topic. Now, I want you to think about this. If you are introducing something that doesn't exist, that's going to be a hard thing to do. When you first sit down to write, if you try to write your introduction before you've written your body, before the heart of your draft is created and you know where this draft is going and you know what you're writing about, you're probably going to have a miserable experience. In face-to-face classes, I would often ask students, raise your hand if you sit down to write and the blank screen wins, and you check social media, or you clean this, or you go do this, or you do anything because that blank screen stops you from getting something done. A lot of times, so 80% of students raise their hand to that. And a lot of times it's because you're trying to write the beginning. In the face-to-face class, I'd ask a kid, I'd say, hey, you, please introduce me to that student over there. And early on in the class, they can't do it. You can't introduce someone you don't know. If you can't introduce someone you don't know, why do you think you can write an introduction for an essay that doesn't yet exist? So the introduction will often be written late or even last in the process. Early on, use your expository question as your introduction early in your process to avoid the tyranny of the blank screen. So early on in the drafting process, just write your expository question. For selling a manure, if she just wrote, what are the effects of jobs like selling manure that people don't realize? Just start with that. Free yourself from having to write an introduction. I'm going to have 5 to 6 introductory strategies that I'll share with you that make sense to think about after you've gotten the body written. So use your expository question early on as your introduction. The body. What is the body? What is the purpose of the body? The body is to share insights. So the body of the essay is where you get people to feel, know, and believe what you feel, know, and believe about your topic. And one way to express this is that one mode of topic equals a paragraph. So do you see this right here? One mode of topic equals a paragraph. The way I want you to think about that is one part of the way you're explaining your topic. So remember, mode is a way to explain a topic. So one mode of topic is what a paragraph does. A paragraph gets the audience to understand one mode of topic. You're picking the mode and you're picking the topic. Let's look at some examples. So one reason Americans love big weddings. That's a student sample I'm going to put in D2L or in Google Classroom so you can see that. One reason Americans love big weddings. Reason is the mode. The topic is big weddings. So a paragraph, it will morph into two because it's a complex idea, but usually a paragraph would be one reason Americans love big weddings. A different paper, one effect of working a job like selling manure. There you go, right? That's the selling manure essay. One effect. The barrio, one quality of a barrio. So one aspect of a barrio. And in fact, in the barrio, there are many paragraphs built around one mode of topic because each paragraph's a new example. For instance, earlier on, he says that one quality of a barrio is it is a home to the people who live there. And he's got each paragraph is a description of something home-like the way the food smells, like that they get their haircuts in the barbershops that are people's living rooms, like they have a credit at the grocery store. Those are all the ways in which it's home-like. So each one of those paragraphs becomes an example of that mode of topic. So remember, mode is a way to explain a topic. The topic is the thing you think you know, the thing that you know a lot about, that you can tell other people that they don't know, and that is relevant, that adults have public conversations about it. Lastly, a conclusion at the college level is inherently different than high school. It is not just a summary. Okay, high school is tell me what you just told me. Repeat your thesis, right? That drives me nuts that that's taught to juniors and seniors in high school. Why would you tell me what you just told me? I can read your thesis. In fact, I read it. Instead of summarizing or repeating your thesis, explore the implications of your insights. And this is very hard to do. It's part of why conclusions are not taught well, because writing them well is really hard and teaching it is really hard. These questions are the best I've come up with for explaining what I'm talking about. After having read this essay, what does the audience want? Let's say I read a whole essay about why Americans love hockey. What do I want at the end of that? I want to know how can I go to a hockey game? What's the easiest way to get started? What are some recent hockey games coming up that I could be excited about? When's the Stanley Cup happening? Whatever it is, right? How have you moved me as someone in the audience? At the end of selling manure, I've read about how this job has effects that are much more meaningful than I realized. So at the end of it, the author says, this is where you should be. You should recognize that all work is valuable work, and we shouldn't belittle other people's work. That's where I've moved to or been moved by it. And what questions do I still have? I'm thinking about the barrio. That author ended that by returning to his opening description of the train and the way in which the barrio was left behind, anticipating what your audience might be thinking or what it wants or where it's gone, and writing to address that is discussing the implications of your work. Don't just summarize, but after having written it, where is your audience and what can you give it at that point? That's what you think about for a conclusion. So this video is supposed to help you at the spot where you're at, where you're starting to draft, where you're maybe making an outline and you're thinking about how do I start getting some sentences down. I have another video about how to literally move from expository questions into outlines into drafts.